All right, good morning, guys. We got a pretty brief meeting, just about what our government is. You know, we're going over our three branches of government. But first, I expect you all know this by now. We're going to start with our new promise. Okay? So let's get going on that. O land of the new, our sacred home, where dreams take flight and hopes are sown, beneath the skies so vast and true, we stand united, strong and new. All right, thank you guys. That was great. You're looking like great future new citizens. I'll begin our presentation now with a short campaign video from our current president, Caden Hawkins.
Hello, new citizens. You should vote me because I care. I know this country is still a long way from being united. 100 years ago, our government failed, and we had to rely on the help of a land in order to get where we are today. And this is unacceptable. As your president, I will do everything in my power to make this country powerful, free, and united.
All right, there we go, guys. So that's our current president, Caden Hawkins, as I said. And today, as I told you, we're talking about the branches of government, so we'll go ahead and start with the executive branch. So, ultimately, the president doesn't have a lot of power because we don't want to give a lot of power to one person so they can't, take over the country, do anything crazy. So, he's mostly the head of the figurehead, our picture for the country, as you can see with our flag. And he can veto legislation. So after laws get passed through the legislature, he can veto them, though that can be overridden. And his only requirements as a president is that he passes a psychological examination. Oh, you got a question? What is it?
Yeah, so how do these presidential elections work?
Good question. So New Country actually uses an electoral college. Each district has a certain number of delegates that are divided up mostly equally based on population. So here we got our map of New Country here. Okay. So here's our 23 districts. Okay. For example, District 1 is down here. That is 12 delegates. These delegates each represent some of the people in this district. These people do not actually vote directly for a candidate, for a presidential candidate. They vote for a delegate to represent them and vote for them. So once the people vote, the delegate casts their vote, which is what his or her people want to vote for. Whichever candidate gets the most votes from the delegates wins. You got a question too?
Yeah, why don't you use direct elections?
We use an electoral college system because it is easier to prevent voter fraud and corrupted elections. It is easier to keep our eyes on a few hundred delegates than it is millions of people. In New Country, corruption is, it's completely forbidden, and we do all we can to diminish it, so that's why we have an electoral college. Another question?
Yeah. Oi, mate, so how do we prevent corruption in this country?
Yep. All the branches have checks and balances on each other, but we'll get to that later, once we get into more of the branches. But now, we'll move on to legislative branch. So, our legislative branch has three houses. Our two lower houses are the Union and the Committee of Domestic Affairs. And we have one upper house called the New Council. Yeah, Connor?
What does the new council do?
I'll talk about that in a minute, Connor. I'm getting there. Anyways, we'll start with the Committee of Domestic Affairs, or the CDA for short. As the title suggests, this house deals with everything domestic. So they make legislation that has to do with interstate commerce. They kind of head like the police force. Anything that is within the country, domestic affairs handles. So they have 275 members, as well as the union actually. Both the union and the Committee of Domestic Affairs has 275 members. And they are elected by a majoritarian system. Yeah, Lane.
I'm quite curious, do the executive and legislative branches have age requirements?
They do. the president must be at least 30 years old to run, but you aren't, if you're running for president, you aren't allowed to be 75 years old at any point while serving your term. So if you're running for president, your last year to run is probably when you're like 68 to 69 years old. And the legislative branch only has an age requirement of 25 years old. So, okay, where was I? Oh yeah, so we went over the Committee of Domestic Affairs. Now I'll talk about the Union. The Union is our other lower house. This house handles everything foreign. So pretty much the same as domestic affairs, but foreign. So they handle foreign commerce. They handle things like our military. They're the head of our military. And just foreign policy in general. So we got obviously our one more legislative house. We have the new council, which is our upper house. The new council is a filter for legislation coming from the lower houses. The lower houses make the legislation, they pass it on to the new council, where the council members vote and decide on if it will be passed on to the executive branch, where it can be vetoed or passed. The new council can also declare war and impeach federal officers. Yeah?
How does the impeachment process work?
Good question. So when the new council wants to impeach a federal officer like the president, all they have to do is vote for it. If they vote for the impeachment, the case will be sent to the Cartier Court, where the judges will decide whether impeachment is lawful or not. And since we're talking about it, let's move on to the judicial branch. We have a completely independent judiciary with 13 justices. Every 10 years, one justice is added to the Cartier Court, and they are actually voted on directly by the people. But it's a majoritarian election, so they must get over 50% of the vote to get the office. And if no justice gets 50% of the votes, there will be runoff elections, just to ensure that we get one every 10 years. Once a candidate is elected, they become a judge for the rest of their life, and this ensures that the judiciary is completely independent. Yeah?
Now, how does that make the judiciary independent?
Since they serve for life, they can make unbiased decisions because the legislator or executive can't threaten to take away their position, and they have no control at all over the judiciary term. Anyways, each district also has a Gucci court that handles smaller cases within their district. And that they'll handle like smaller things. Like the Cartier Court handles national things, Gucci Court handles district things. It's that simple. And honestly, that's everything I have today on the 3 branches. If there's no questions, we can go ahead and wrap this up. What's up, Connor?
I thought this was a meeting for the U.S. immigration.
Oh, brother.
Oh, Connor.